Hi, everybody. I'm back after fixing Papa's lunch and sending him back to work and went outside. That's why my glasses are dark. They'll lighten up, but I'm going to read you guys the rest of chapter 11 and into chapter 12, and I'm going to keep reading until I get this book done. The library wants it back. I'll get it. So they're in town now. Remember, they rode their bikes. They're in town, and they're going to try and go to get something that should be in the post office. Remember, they found that thing that said there was something in the post office. So Rick pointed to this wooden sign, and it said Calypso's Island. Fine books saved from the sea, new and used. Rick pushed the door open. A little bell over the doorway let out a cheerful jingle. It was an old-fashioned bookstore, quite unlike the vast, clean, uncluttered megastores that Julia and Jason knew back in London. Books were stocked on the ground and on low wooden shelves that formed a kind of pathway through the store. It was a maze, a labyrinth of books. "I'll be right there," a voice called out from around the corner. Miss Calypso was a petite woman with clear eyes and a calm demeanor. She was wearing a large silk scarf and a long flowered dress, and a pair of practical flat shoes completed her outfit. "Rick Banner, what a pleasant surprise," she paused, glancing warmly at Julie and Jason. "You must be the two Londoners." They exchanged greetings and shook hands. "It was a good sign to see you in the bookstore so soon after moving here," Miss Calypso noted with a wink. "Business has been slow, and I need all the readers I can get." Miss Calypso leaned forward, placing a hand on Jason's shoulder. She whispered, "And what do you think of Kilmore Cove? Is it too small? Too remote? Too stuck in the middle of nowhere?" "Oh, no," Jason replied. "Of course," Miss Calypso pressed on. "It must come as a great shock for you to move from Piccadilly Circus to our sea-swept rocks and the far-flung shores, from Big Ben to our little lighthouse, except that, after all, you do live in Argo Manor. And when one lives in a house like that," she said, "well, what a paradise. The sea, the sky, the great old house. Who could ask for more?" Rick stood by in silence, politely waiting for a chance to speak. "Actually, we've come here on business," he said. "Of course," Miss Calypso explained. "You need books." She flicked her hand at the bookshelves. "It's a small store, but well stocked. Sports, mysteries, history, magic, religion, literature, whatever your interests. I probably have a book for you." Julia glanced quickly at Jason and Rick. She sensed that it was up to her. "Actually," Julia said, "we didn't come here for a book." "No?" Miss Calypso looked in Julia's eyes. "Then what brings you to me?" Jason handed Miss Calypso the slip they'd found at Argo Manor, and she took it from him, frowning slightly. "Well, who gave you this?" "The old caretaker, Nestor," Jason lied with a surprising ease. "He told us to come here and see if you could get the package for us." "Please?" Miss Calypso seemed to think it over. "It is Saturday," she stated. "The post office is closed." "Oh, please," Jason pleaded. "If you'd be so kind enough to open it for just a minute, we'd be so grateful." Miss Calypso shook her head. "Even if the post office were open, I couldn't give you what you seek. The delivery slip says it's to be given only to the head of Argo Manor. All I see before me are 3 kids." Jason and Julia explained that their parents were the head of Argo Manor. Jason nodded, adding, "Right now they're too busy with our move. Otherwise, they would have come to pick it up themselves." "Nestor said you'd understand," Julia added. Mrs. Calypso shrugged and relented. "Oh, sure, why not? It's typical of the owners of Argo Manor to send someone to run his errands. Then you'll open up the post office?" "No," Miss Calypso answered, her lips curled up in a feline smile. "It's Saturday, and rules should always be obeyed. Don't you agree? 3 books." Miss Calypso turned to look at Rick. He stood ramrod straight, as if challenging Miss Calypso to a duel. "Excuse me, Rick," she said. "If you open the post office for my friends," he said, "then we will buy and read 3 books. You can choose them yourselves." In his pocket he had the money that Manfred the chauffeur had given him. A slight smile formed on Miss Calypso's face, and she was clearly intrigued by Rick's offer. 3 books? "Well, it's been a bad month for business, and rent is due." "Please," Julia urged. Miss Calypso held out her hand. Her grip was strong. "It's a deal," she agreed, shaking on it. 15 minutes later, Jason, Julie, and Rick found themselves on the very edge of the dock, stretching out into the sea. The cliff towered up to their left. The port, full of battered fishing boats, was to their right. Jason held a package about the size of a shoebox. wrapped in brown packing tape. Julia unhappily shifted the bulk of 3 hardcover books in her arms. "It was your brilliant idea, Rick," she mumbled. "You hold him," and she thrust the books into his hands. Rick smiled at Julia. "Hey, it worked, didn't it?" He glanced at the titles Miss Calypso had selected. Wuthering Heights for Julia. For him it was Jules Verne, The Mysterious Island, and poor Jason had the thickest, most intimidating book of all, Ramses by Christian Jacques. Jason slowly and patiently peeled the tape off the package. "Look," he said, beaming. Inside the box, buried beneath a cushion of crumbled newspaper, were 4 keys. The keys were very old, very ornate, and covered with a thin film of red dust. Each key had a finely crafted handle. Rick picked up one at a time, randomly, raising it to the light for a better look. "It's an animal," he murmured, studying the carved handle. Julia leaned into Rick's shoulder. "You're right," she whispered. "It's a lizard." "No. Is it a lizard?" No. Jason picked up another one. "I'd say this one is a hedgehog or a porcupine," he announced. Julia chose a key with a handle in the shape of an elephant. "Hey, it even looks like you," Jason teased. "Har, har, very clever," Julia waited sarcastically. "You so slay me with your wit, Jason. You compare me to an elephant, but you forget that I'm your twin." The final key was a bird with the face of an owl. Lizard, hedgehog, elephant, and owl. Rick murmured, studying the 4 keys. "What do these animals all have in common?" "I don't know. A love of romantic movies? A long walk on the beach," said Julia. "Get serious for once," Jason replied sharply. "Can't you see? At Argo Manor, we have a door with 4 locks. And here, by some crazy stroke of luck, 4 keys have just been handed to us." See the owl on the head of the key, guys? Or the handle? "Freaky," Julie commented. "Is there anything else in the box?" Rick asked. Jason searched through the pieces of newspaper. He lifted up a roll of parchment, similar to the one they'd found inside the cliff. The parchment was covered with the same symbols as the message from the cliff. "Freaky deaky," Julia said. Now do you guys believe me?" Jason asked. "There's something weird going on at Argo Manor. Ulysses Moore has secrets, and we're going to get to the bottom of it." Chapter 12, A Sudden Storm. The 3 kids began the long, arduous climb back up to Argo Manor. Having lived all his life along the steep cliffs of Kilmore Cove, Rick was prepared for the challenge, even with Nestor's old heavy bike. "Just grind it out, one pedal after another," he told himself. "Don't look around. Don't fret. Just keep those legs steadily churning." Rick wondered how the twins would manage, even with superior bicycles. They probably were having a hard time making it to the top. He smiled to himself. When Julia raced into the lead, "She'll never be able to keep it up," he thought. Rick matched pace with Jason, who was riding just off to his right. Up they climbed, up and up. Rick could sense Jason faltering, a pained expression on his face. Jason's breathing became heavier. His weight shifted awkwardly, yet Rick noticed Jason refused to give up. Up ahead, there were still no signs of Julia. Rick was impressed, but even though Jason could not match his sister's ability, Rick saw he had heart. "Let's rest," Rick said finally. Pulled to the side of the road and dismounted. It was an act of kindness toward Jason, who quickly accepted the suggestion. He bent over the bike frame, struggling to catch his breath. "Wow," he said finally. Rick smiled. "My heart is pounding," Jason confessed. "Let's walk the rest of the way. It's not that far." The 2 boys strode down the long road together. Their bodies ached, yet their minds raced with possibilities. The secret door, the strange keys, the mysteries of Ulysses Moore. "We're almost home," Jason said after a while, and at that instant the clouds burst with rain. It was a sudden, violent downpour. In seconds, the boys were drenched. "Nice weather we're having," Jason commented in a flat, matter-of-fact tone. Rick shook his head and laughed. Soon Jason joined in. The 2 boys felt giddy, laughing in the rain. A crackling fire awaited them inside the house, and a dry Julia. She'd managed to beat the rain. She greeted them with a smile. She threw a change of clothes into Rick's arms. "They're my dad's," she said. "It may not do much for your cool factor, but at least you won't be wet." Nestor was in the kitchen clanging pots. "He's making soup," Julia told the boys. "Dinner is almost ready." Jason glanced at Rick. "Don't say anything about the keys in front of Nestor," he warned. "Why not?" Rick asked. "I can't say exactly. It's just a feeling, I guess." "I don't trust him. Don't totally trust him either," Julia said. "Let's keep this to ourselves for now." 3 kids gathered around a kitchen table a few minutes later, and Nestor whistled happily while stirring the soup on the stove. Rain drummed against the window panes. The fire crackled in the fireplace, filling the rooms with a warm, smoky aroma. The telephone rang. It was Jason and Julia's parents checking in. Yes, everything is fine, Jason said. He neglected to mention the small detail that he'd almost fallen off the cliff and died a horrible death. His mother asked to speak with Nestor. The old man looked at the 3 kids as he spoke into the phone. He winked and stirred the soup with his free hand. 3 angels, the caretaker said into the phone. No problem at all. Of course. Yes. Don't worry about a thing. No, of course not. No problem. They're eating vegetable soup with sourdough bread. He made a face. Yes, I'll make sure they brush their teeth. All right, enjoy yourselves. Everything's fine. Take as long as you need. He handed the phone to Julia. Your turn, Nestor whispered. Jason could barely contain himself during dinner. He had 4 keys burning a hole in his pocket, yet they couldn't be used until Nestor left them alone. We'll clean up, he finally offered. You've already done so much for us. Nestor nodded and pushed himself away from the table. Perhaps Mr. Banner would like to spend the night, he suggested. It's raining awfully hard outside. Rick's heart leaped. I'd love to, he exclaimed. I mean, sure, if it's okay with these guys. Rick phoned home and it was settled. He was to spend the night at Argo Manor. A peal of thunder cracked through the air and the house lights flickered for a moment. Nestor looked distractedly at the lights, which dimmed and then brightened again. He rose and turned to leave. Where are you going? Julia asked. Nestor placed his hand on the doorknob and turned it with a decisive clack. Back to my house. No offense, but I am an old man and I prefer to spend my time alone with a book. You will be fine. You know where I am if you need anything. He pointed to the dishwasher. The detergent is that bottom cabinet. Do a good job cleaning up. And with that, he walked out into the storm.